There's something unsettling about walking through a place that was once full of life but now stands in silence. Imagine golden beaches, luxury pools, and bustling resorts suddenly left behind, frozen in time. These weren't just hotels, they were dreams built on paradise, where laughter, music, and sunsets once painted every corner. Today, all that remains are empty rooms, broken chairs, and echoes of memories. In this video, we'll explore 5 incredible beach resorts that turned into ghost towns, places that prove even paradise can vanish, leaving behind stories that still whisper through the waves. If you enjoyed this journey into forgotten places, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next story. 1. Varosha, Famagusta, Cyprus. The first time I stood at the edge of Varosha, I felt like I had stepped into a time capsule that no one had touched for decades. The warm breeze from the Mediterranean carried the scent of salt, but the streets in front of me were silent, almost painfully quiet. Behind the fences, I could see what once had been the pride of Cyprus, tall hotels facing the beach, now nothing more than hollow skeletons with broken windows and rusting balconies. I had read about Varosha before. In the early 1970s, this place was alive. Famous celebrities like Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton vacationed here. Tourists filled the golden sandy beaches, and the streets were lined with shops, cafes, and nightclubs. Locals used to say Varosha never slept. There was always music, always laughter, always lights glowing against the water. But in 1974, everything changed. When the Turkish military invaded Cyprus, people left their homes and businesses behind overnight. They locked their doors, expecting to return in a few days. They never came back. Walking along the fence, I noticed a child's bicycle leaning against a wall, rusted but still standing as if waiting for its owner. Cracked mannequins stood frozen in abandoned store windows, still wearing faded dresses from that summer of 1974. It was as if time had suddenly stopped, leaving behind a haunting reminder of what life once looked like. What struck me most wasn't just the emptiness, it was the feeling that life was still present in some invisible way. I could almost imagine the sound of waves mixing with the laughter of children running barefoot on the sand. I could picture couples dining under the glow of streetlights, the air filled with the smell of fresh seafood and wine. All of it vanished in one single moment of history. As I stood there, my heart felt heavy. I thought about the families who had to leave everything, their homes, their memories, even their hopes for the future. Varosha is not just an abandoned place, it is a story of people torn away from their lives. And the strangest part is that it remains sealed, untouched, as if the ghosts of the past still guard it. Looking at Varosha that day, I realized it is not just a ghost town on a beach, it is a living memory of a paradise that was lost in a matter of hours. And standing there, I couldn't help but wonder how it must feel for those who once called this place home, to know that their paradise is now just a forbidden dream. 2. Hotel del Salto, Tequendama Falls, Colombia. When I first saw the Hotel del Salto, it felt like something out of a dream, or maybe a nightmare. Perched on the edge of a towering cliff, the building looked both majestic and broken at the same time. The roar of the Tequendama Falls filled the air, a constant thunder that seemed to echo through the empty hallways of the hotel. The mist from the waterfall touched my face, cold and damp, as if nature itself was reminding me of how fragile everything man-made can be. I stood at the entrance, staring at the tall windows and faded white walls. Decades ago, this was a glamorous place. The wealthy of Bogotá came here to escape the city, to dine, to dance, to enjoy the breathtaking view of the falls. I tried to imagine the laughter that once filled these walls, the clinking of glasses, the sound of music drifting out over the canyon. But now, all that remained was silence, broken only by the rush of water below. As I walked inside, the air felt heavy, carrying the smell of mold and damp stone. My footsteps echoed against the cracked tiles, and I could see patches of graffiti on the once grand walls. I paused by a broken window where the curtains still hung, tattered and swaying in the wind. Looking out, the view of the waterfall was breathtaking, but the emptiness of the building made it strangely unsettling. I thought about why this place was abandoned. In the 20th century, the Bogotá River became polluted, the once pure waters turning toxic. Guests stopped coming, and slowly the hotel fell into decline. There are also dark stories tied to this place. People say that over the years, many lost souls chose this cliff as their final step, vanishing into the mist of the falls. Standing there, I could almost feel those heavy memories lingering in the air, like shadows that refused to leave. Yet, despite its decay, the hotel still held a strange kind of beauty. The carved staircases, the balconies hanging over the gorge, the way the building seemed to cling desperately to the cliff, it was haunting but unforgettable. I found myself torn between sadness for what was lost and awe at the raw power of the place. As I left, I looked back one last time. The Hotel del Salto stood silently against the roar of the falls, a monument to both human dreams and human failures. I couldn't shake the feeling that the walls still remembered every laugh, every cry, every secret. And for a moment, I felt like I wasn't just visiting an abandoned hotel, I was walking through a story that will never truly end. 3 La Ensenada Beach Resort, El Salvador. When I first arrived at La Ensenada Beach Resort, the sound of the ocean waves was the only thing that welcomed me. The resort sat quietly on the shore, surrounded by palm trees swaying gently in the wind, but there was no life, no voices, no laughter, no music. The silence felt heavy, as if the whole place was holding its breath. Walking through the entrance, I could almost imagine what this resort must have been like in its golden days. Families arriving with their bags, children running toward the pool, couples enjoying cocktails by the beach. The wide balconies were once filled with chairs where tourists sat to watch the sunset over the Pacific. But when I looked around, all I saw now were broken chairs, cracked walls, and weeds growing between the tiles. The story of La Ensenada is tied deeply to El Salvador's past. Back in the 1970s, it was a place of joy, a small paradise where people from the city came to escape their worries. But when the civil war erupted in the 1980s, everything changed. Tourists stopped coming, fear replaced leisure, and slowly the resort fell into silence. The ocean still looked the same, but the humans who once filled this place were gone. As I walked deeper inside, I saw the empty swimming pool. It was filled with rainwater now, green with algae, but I could still picture children splashing and laughing here. A broken lifeguard chair leaned to one side, as if waiting for someone who would never return. I touched the wall, and it crumbled slightly under my fingers. Time had taken its toll. What hit me the hardest was the dining hall. The long tables were covered in dust, but I could almost hear the echoes of plates clinking and music playing during lively nights. Standing there, I closed my eyes and imagined the smell of grilled seafood, the sound of salsa music, and the warm glow of lanterns lighting the room. And then I opened my eyes to find nothing but emptiness. I felt a strange mix of sadness and peace. Sadness for the people who lost this piece of paradise because of war and instability, but peace because nature had gently taken it back. The ocean waves didn't care about the buildings, the palms still danced in the wind, and the sunsets were as beautiful as ever. When I finally turned to leave, I looked back one last time at La Ensenada. The abandoned resort stood quietly against the horizon, a reminder of how fragile human dreams can be. To me, it wasn't just an abandoned beach resort, it was a memory frozen in time, a place where joy once lived and where silence now tells the story. For Quetzalt, British Columbia, Canada. The road to Quetzalt felt endless, twisting through thick forests and mountains before finally opening up to the view of the Pacific. When I reached the town, it was hard to believe what I was seeing. A perfect little community sat there. Rows of houses, clean streets, a library, even a recreation center with a swimming pool. Everything looked ready, as if the people had just stepped out for the day. But there was no one. Kitsault was completely empty. I parked my car near what looked like a grocery store. The glass doors were locked, and dust covered the windows. Inside, I could make out the faint outline of shelves, some still holding old signs. The strangest part was how fresh everything looked. Unlike other ghost towns I had seen, Kitsault wasn't falling apart, it was frozen, preserved in silence. As I walked down the streets, I felt the weight of its story. Kitsault wasn't always a ghost town. In the late 1970s, it was built as a modern mining town. Families came here with big dreams, new houses, and the promise of a good future. There was even a movie theater and restaurants. For a short while, it thrived. But in 1982, the price of molybdenum, a mineral mined here, collapsed. Almost overnight, the mine shut down, and the entire town was abandoned. More than 1,000 people had to pack their bags and leave everything behind. I stepped inside one of the houses. The door creaked open, and I found myself in a living room with faded wallpaper and an old couch still sitting in place. A calendar from the early 80s hung on the wall. It was eerie, like walking into a memory someone had forgotten to take with them. The silence was deep, broken only by the sound of the wind moving through the trees. I walked to the edge of town, where the view of the ocean spread wide before me. Standing there, I tried to imagine what it must have felt like for those families, forced to leave their homes, their community, and the life they had just started to build. There was no destruction here, no war, no disaster, just the slow, cruel hand of economics. That's what made it so haunting. Kitsault wasn't ruined by nature, it was abandoned by necessity. As I left, I looked back one last time. The houses stood quietly, the streets perfectly still, as if waiting for people to return. And I couldn't help but think that Kitsault is not just a ghost town, it's a reminder of how fragile our plans can be, and how quickly a dream can turn into silence. 5 Abandoned Beach Resort, Koh Samui, Thailand. I still remember the first time I stepped onto the beach in Koh Samui and saw the abandoned resort standing in front of me. The sand was soft and warm under my feet, the ocean stretched out endlessly, and the waves whispered like they had for centuries. But behind that beautiful view stood empty villas, broken swimming pools, and stairways that led to nowhere. It was a strange mix of paradise and sadness. Walking closer, I noticed the resort's bungalows lined up along the shore. Their wooden doors were locked, but many windows had been shattered by storms. Curtains fluttered in the breeze like ghosts waving from inside. Palm trees leaned over the rooftops, their roots starting to crack the tiles. Nature had taken back what humans had abandoned. I had heard stories about this place. Years ago, it was meant to be a luxury retreat, a spot where tourists from all over the world could experience tropical beauty and comfort. But the dream collapsed. Some say it was the financial crisis, others say the devastating tsunami in the early 2000s scared investors and visitors away. Whatever the reason, construction stopped, workers left, and the resort was never finished. Since then, it has been sitting quietly, decaying under the sun. As I wandered through the main lobby, I felt like I was walking through someone's unfinished dream. The marble floor was cracked, but I could still see the design of what once promised elegance. An old reception desk stood at the center, covered in dust, as if waiting for guests who would never arrive. The strangest part was the swimming pool. It was huge, shaped beautifully, but filled now with rainwater and dead leaves. I stood there for a while, imagining the sound of children splashing, music playing, and cocktails being served by the water. But all I could hear was the sound of waves and the cries of seabirds. I walked toward the beachside villas, and for a moment I just stood there, staring at the ocean. The view was breathtaking, golden light from the sunset spilling over the horizon, painting the sea in colors of fire. It felt almost cruel that such beauty stood beside such emptiness. What touched me most was the feeling that this place still carried a heartbeat, even in silence. It was a reminder of how fragile our plans are, how quickly paradise can turn into a memory. Standing there, I couldn't help but feel both awe and sadness. Awe at the power of nature to heal and reclaim, sadness at how easily human dreams can be abandoned. When I finally walked away, the resort looked peaceful against the setting sun. And I knew that even though people had left it behind, the ocean had never stopped singing to it.